So, first of all, welcome to everybody, and a real welcome to Marie Lloyd, who's the interviewee for tonight's session. Give us a wave, Marie. There we go.
That's Hello all. It's fantastic to be here. It's my first ever Desert Island Disc, so I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah. As we all will remember, Marie played actually in a beautiful, beautiful performance of the Mozart Clarinet Concerto with us just over 3 years ago on a horrible, cold, wet November evening in St. Peter's Church in Oundle. Well, I guess sort of to start off with the things of the moment, Marie, I mean, things have changed an awful lot since then. How's life for you at the moment as a professional musician, sort of in the arts, which have been really one of the most hard hit areas of all?
Quiet, I think I think that's my life at the moment. I mean, it's very, very different. I mean, it's like chalk and cheese to what it was before. I think I've spent more time at home than I have done ever in the last, since March. And in a way that's been quite nice. I mean, we did quite a lot of allotment in the summer and things like that. But it's much harder now because we all got back to a little bit of work in September. And that was really exciting to get back to work and get back to seeing my friends and colleagues. And it felt so sort of exciting and heartwarming to be back. And then we stopped again. And I think the second stop has been harder than the first stop because we can see that there's not really any end at the moment. I mean, it seems to be much more elongated than last time. And orchestras are not really... They're planning things, but they're not planning things for ages and ages and ages. So the next thing that my orchestra is planning to do is hopefully in July, which means we'd have worked for 4 days in October, and the last time would have been the end of February last year, which is unusual to say the least. I'm lucky that I do some teaching as well, so it's been really amazing to sort of still connect with the kids. I teach sort of 13 to 18-year-olds, and they've been particularly hard hit as well. So it's nice to sort of, try and make the lessons really fun and interactive and just try and sort of be a very happy, friendly face at the end of the screen. They've all been working really hard, which is absolutely fantastic. And I think they've got a lot out of that. In some ways, they've got a bit more time to practice. So some of them have done the most amazing things. But I think they're beginning to find it a little bit difficult as well. Moving forward, we just need to sort of, just stay positive and, just keep going, really. And we will get out of it eventually, basically. Yeah.
Great. Okay, so what's the first piece you've chosen for us tonight, Marie?
Well, it's a slightly random one. It's Janet Baker singing sea songs. When I was young, singing was what I did. I didn't really play the clarinet at all seriously. I can tell you how I got into that in a minute, but singing was what I did every week, week in and week out. I sang in church choirs, I sang in youth choirs. And actually I went to music college on second study singer, and I thought maybe at one point could I be a singer, but no, I'm not good enough at all. But I love the voice, and this particular piece, she sings so wonderfully beautifully. She does things with a voice that you can't even imagine, and the way she enunciates the words creates this incredible atmosphere, and I just love it, basically. Yeah.
Let's hear it. That's extraordinarily beautiful.
Isn't it? I mean, just how she starts, how she sort of enunciates the words, just even the first phrase, the space as well.
There's a moment soon after she starts where there's that slight higher note just comes from nowhere.
I know.
It's like, is it there? Isn't it there? It's just... And
then suddenly, yeah, incredible, absolutely incredible. She has so much space in her words. It sort of space seems infinite with her. You get that with some musicians, that actually they're playing things in the same time as everyone else, but suddenly they seem to have 3 or 4 much more time than anyone. And she's one of those. Yeah, and I love that.
Yeah, just extraordinarily beautiful music there. So you started out life as a singer.
Yes, soprano.
Where did the clarinet come in and interfere with all of this then?
Oh, so basically I was in a recorder group at school. In our middle school, everyone used to have to play the recorder, but every year we went back to the beginning again. So I was just getting incredibly bored. I'd obviously moaned to my mother, who moaned to her parents about it. And my grandfather said, oh, I've got something that will keep her quiet. In the back cupboard there, I've got my old clarinets, just give them to her and that will keep her quiet. And that was basically it. I mean, I think now of what other instruments I might wanted to play, but actually there is no other instrument I would have wanted to play. So, you know, is that fate? I don't know. Rather interestingly, my grandparents' houses were burgled and everything was cleaned out, except this really battered box at the back of the cupboard. And that were the clarinets. So I still have them now. I still have them in the back of my cupboard. And my daughter's not allowed to touch them. She plays the clarinet now, which is nothing to do with me. I don't have anything to do with that. And but yes, these ones are in the back of the cupboard and they're just wonderful. They're a pair of old Martells.
Oh,
1910. And I went to music college on them actually, before my clarinet teacher then subtly very said, I think you need to change those. I think you need to get something a bit more modern now.
So who taught you at school? Were you taught at school? Or what?
No, I wasn't taught at school. I started off for a term at sort of a music school, which didn't really work out with the teacher. And then my mum found via word of mouth a bassoonist. And I learned with him. And I learned with him until I was 17. It was a bit random because I learned with the bassoonist, but his wife was a clarinettist, but I never learned with her. So I don't understand that. But anyway, he was the most wonderful man. And actually, when I first got my job, I got them a couple of tickets to come to one of the concerts we did at the Festival Hall. Because I felt that actually I owed a lot to him, actually.
Oh, that's lovely. So that sort of segues nicely into your next choice.
Yes, which you have to remind me of. I can't remember the order. It's the Boulez, isn't it?
The Strauss duet concertina.
Oh, the Strauss, yes. It's the way around, sorry. Yes, I mean, you know, so music college, this was one of my teachers. And of course, as you know, this is my orchestra. And I discovered this recording, and actually the old wind section of the COE did a huge amount of recordings under the Chamber Orchestra wind solos, the Chamber Orchestra of Europe. They did all the wind octets, the Mozart Grand Partita, and then they actually started doing all the concertos as well. So there's a Copland concerto and a Mozart concerto. But this particular piece I absolutely love. It's based around sort of Beauty and the Beast, rather randomly. So obviously the clarinet is the beauty and the bassoon is the beast. And I just love the way they play it. It's the most wonderful opening. The clarinet sort of weaves this incredible song-like lines, actually. It really feels like he's singing through the clarinet, actually, which I love. Yeah, and, you know, he's been a huge influence in my life, obviously. Him and my other teachers. I've been very lucky with all the teachers I've had, and they've all really given me something else. But anyway, this is the most beautiful piece.
Okay, let's hear this. This is the opening of the third movement. Oh, it's delightful. I guess I better not comment on the sort of Beauty and the Beast element because I have a feeling that the bassoon section's listening in. So
yeah, I noticed a couple of comments on that, I thought.
That's the most delightful. Right, coming back to the clarinet stuff, that's wonderful clarinet playing.
Yes, it is. Yeah,
absolutely superb. And you know, I think he's a sort of. I know a lot of the amateur players I know. You know, he's of the top orchestral players. You know, he's the guy we love to listen to.
Yeah, it's interesting.
He can vocalize the sound. You know, he sings it. He's gorgeous.
I was going to say exactly the same thing. It harks back to Janet Baker. There's so much space, and he really is singing through it. And I think that's really interesting. He learnt with Thea King, and I think she does as well. And I think in that case, there's a real sort of line of these sort of vocalized clarinets coming through. Yeah, and Thea was, one of the first. She was absolutely wonderful player.
Yeah. So moving through to college, Richard was one of your teachers at music college.
Well, he was my last teacher, really. So I went to Trinity first. So I learnt with Keith Puddy at Trinity, who was fantastic. And then I did 3 years there and moved to the Royal College of Music, where I learnt with Colin Bradbury. And then right at the end, just as I was leaving, Richard started teaching there. And one of my friends had him and came into the bar after one lesson and said, "Oh my goodness, what an amazing lesson that was." So I thought, oh, interesting. You know, I had a few lessons going with, you know, that I hadn't used up. So I asked to have them with him. And yeah, I think in some respects, he sort of taught me how to be a musician more than a clarinettist. You know, a musician through the instrument, and to have that freedom in wanting to express myself through the instrument. I think that was, you know, and I was very lucky, you know, pretty much immediately after leaving college, you know, I was working with him, and, you know, I started playing in COE. So there's, you know, that sort of influence has carried on. And now we do, you know, I've done some Wigmores with him recently. You know, we did the Mendelssohn Concertstück. So that relationship, you know, continues. And actually, it's really nice just seeing Matthew's name there as well, because, you know, we did a lot. We went to a music festival last year, one of the last things we did together, and we played a lot of the clarinet and bassoon duets, you know, the Poulenc and the Glinka trio and stuff. So I don't know, it feels quite a personal CD, that one, actually. You know, knowing all my friends are playing on it. It's nice.
Yeah, so what other musical influences were there in those days at sort of music college? Obviously, you know, your clarinet teachers are always influential, but there are always other things that come in.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of, you know, the most amazing thing about music college is that people are coming from all over the country, you know, with lots of very different sort of casts and, you know, likes themselves. I mean, when I first started working, I remember that one particular guy I was with was completely into jazz. And, you know, I was lucky enough to be on tour with him, and we'd go to places like Blue Note and see Ahmad Jamal. And I'd never seen any of these people before. I hadn't heard about any of them. I'd led, you know, quite an insular life until that point. And that was unbelievable to sort of see this world sort of opening out from music college and, you know, outwards. You know, and all the conductors we worked with, you know, everyone leaves a little bit of influence in some way. I mean, I think my most influential things happened when I first went to COE. But, you know, music college, you know, I was lucky enough to have a masterclass with Jack Brymer. And that was unbelievable, because there's such a lineage there to, you know, Richard Strauss himself and, you know, Thomas Beecham. And, you know, he was amazing. He just did about 3 or 4 words, and suddenly, you know, Scheherazade completely transformed in front of my eyes. And, you know, there's little things that you can sort of put along the way, really, and it all adds up to a whole of where I'm at now, and hoping to pass that back to who I teach, really, you know.
Yeah, well, I guess your next choice sort of picks up on that theme of influential conductors, because it's the recording by Boulez of the Daphnis and Chloe Suite No. 2, which the parts of the winds, well, the clarinet section will listen to this, as it has some, how can I put it, squeaky bum moments in for the entire clarinet section. So let's hear Boulez with the Berlin Phil doing Daphnis and Chloe Suite No. 2. That's just glorious, isn't it? Absolutely glorious.
You can really see the dawn, can't you? And the sun suddenly comes up and rises above the horizon.
And I think you am I right thinking you've played under Boulez?
Yeah, I did. I was really lucky. I mean, you know, when I first started working, I was working a lot with the LSO, which by some fluke of amazingness. I mean, you know, I was incredibly lucky. I did a lot of their stuff, and including Boulez's, I think it was the 80th birthday world tour. We went round and round and round doing, oh golly, numerous performances of Rite of Spring and Schoenberg, Pelléas and Melisande, Mahler 6. We went everywhere, and every single night was different. With a man who stood at the front of the stage with the most minimal of movements and the wonderful kind eyes, and everyone wanted to play for him. You know, he was such a genius. I mean, he didn't show anything, and yet every night was different. And yet the movement was literally like this. It was, you know, just very academic, but there was something there that made you play different every single time. Yeah.
That's fascinating. So again, you played with the LSO there. I mean, how did your sort of early career develop? Because it sounds like you were quite busy quite soon.
Well, it was a bit bizarre. I left college and actually I didn't work at all for 2 years. Nothing. I mean, I did auditions and I didn't get anywhere. And then I did an audition from the LSO and I got a trial. And that point on, I was basically there pretty much most weeks. And then from there, everything then started to fall into place after that, basically. You just need one piece of luck. You know, I know that was my piece of luck. And I'm very, very thankful to that clarinet section for taking a punt on me, because if you looked at my CV, there was no experience whatsoever. And yet suddenly I was in at the deep end, you know, with all their big Barbican concerts playing, you know, really exposed things. And they just threw me in and they taught me everything about playing in an orchestra. All those things that you don't really learn at college, which maybe you should, I don't know. But yes, they taught me everything. So I was very lucky to have those.
Who was in the section at the time? I mean,
it was Andrew Mariner,
yeah.
Nick Rodwell, and John Stenhouse. I mean, you know, they were the most amazing men, and you know, they took me under their wings, and we went everywhere. And you know, they took me to the restaurants they always go to, and they took me to they told me about jazz, and you know, they told me about, you know, their lives and everything. It was really, really amazing. Yeah.
Well, that's fantastic. So, I mean, as well as the LSO, what else starts to happen at that time?
BBC Symphony starts to happen quite a lot, and from that point on, you know, lots of orchestras appear. I think what happens is when you're new on the scene, everyone wants to try you out, and there's always the next new person. And at that point, I was that new person, so I started working with everyone. And then I got a call from COE. So at that point, I dropped the phone. Actually, I dropped the phone before, actually, because I'd done this audition for the LSO, and I was living at home with my parents because where I was staying, you know, the landlady had sold the flat, so I'd just come home and the phone rang, and my brother went to answer the phone, and he said, "Andrew Mariner's on the phone. He wants to talk to you." And I said, "Don't be ridiculous." I said, "You're taking, you know, you're pulling my leg. I'm not going. I'm not going to fall for this. Forget it." So he said, no, really. So we ended up in the hallway with me having this row about not actually speaking to him on the phone because I didn't believe it was him. And then, of course, I had to go and pick up the phone, and it was him. So I wonder whether he remembers that. It was a bit embarrassing.
That's excellent. So let's move on to disc number 4, which you've picked, a Brahms Serenade.
Yeah. The second one. I love the fact that there's, sorry, I don't want anyone to take this personally, but I love the fact that there's no violins.
I do as well, yes.
It just changes the whole sound world. And it's quite unusual to get that sound world. I mean, you know, I love a full orchestra, but there's something very special about this piece with the richness. And then that's sort of, you know, added in with, you know, the clarinets, the way he wrote for the clarinets and the bassoons and the horns, and you get a real sort of, yeah, lovely, lovely tonal sound. And this recording I adore. I think the Scottish Chamber play it amazingly. The clarinet section's fantastic, and Mackerras is wonderful.
Okay, let's hear the last movement. Yeah, it's lovely. There's some fabulous section work for the back row of the wind section in that, isn't there?
Yeah, I think that's why it's one of my favourite pieces as well, because it's such a wonderful piece to play. It's written so beautifully for the clarinet. He knows how to write for the clarinet as Brahms. You know,
absolutely.
It all comes through in that second serenade.
Yeah. So let's go do more about the Chamber Orchestra of Europe, because you know it's a fantastic orchestra, and you've been associated with them for some time now, I think. So
2001 I joined. Oh my, I'm almost coming up to 20 years. Which I can't quite believe, but yes.
So in a sense, what's where's that taken you? When did you start to do solo work as a matter of interest as well? That's another sort of a different side of your career, I think.
Yeah, I've started, I mean, I think it's sort of run concurrently the whole way through. I've been very lucky that I've had all these amazing sort of sides that I've always done some chamber music. The chamber music has always, you know, I've also done a lot of contemporary music, orchestral in various sizes, you know, solo stuff, recital work. I mean, I've just been so lucky that it's all sort of fallen into place. But for me, I don't know, COE has been the biggest thing. I think because, you know, it's my orchestra. So I feel sort of, you know, everyone's like a family in that orchestra. You know, there's lots of people there. We're about to celebrate our 40th birthday and people have been there for 40 years. They set it up. There's a real sense of cohesionness. And then, you know, the history traveling through. The conductors we work with tend to have really long-lasting relationships with them, the orchestra, and have been sort of pivotal in how we are now and how we play. You know, you look at the beginning, you know, Abardo came on board quite early on with Sasha Snyder, and then, you know, Harnoncourt appeared really quite soon after that, and, you know, did some pivotal recordings and did basically most of his research with the orchestra and how, you know, to play Beethoven symphonies. And then more recently, you know, Haitink, right at the end of his career, just basically was working with us all the time. And that was amazing to have this sort of grandfather of music there in front of us. Most incredible man. That humanity came out the whole time, you know. And then we, at the moment now, we're working a lot with Yannick Nézet-Séguin, who's amazing, but sort of the complete opposite. He's only 40 and, you know, has so much energy and is so inquiring and has so many ideas. So, yeah, I mean, and my friends are there. You know, everyone's been there a very long time. So there's a very, I don't know, we sit down to the first rehearsal and it feels like we're back again as family, much like you all must feel when you sit down to a rehearsal. It just feels very familiar. We know how each other are going to play. You know, we know what's going to happen for the people sitting next to us, what they're going to do with this phrase. And we know what we will therefore do to make that phrase work as well. And it's just, yeah, it's been one of the most amazing experiences of my career, being in COE, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you know, I guess, you know, we're all staggered by the way that the pros play, but you must have had one or two embarrassing moments, I guess. So is there anything you would care to divulge to us on this?
Well, you know the most embarrassing one, Andy, because I told you that the other day, which was actually quite a recent one. So I bought myself quite a new clarinet case, but so unusually, there wasn't any specific place for the clarinets to go. So you sort of did lots of, you know, stuffing and you put them in. So there was not an A clarinet part and a B flat clarinet part. It was all sort of a bit more laissez-faire. So I always knew which one I was going to put in what place, but obviously someone had been talking to me and I put them round the wrong way. So it was at the Edinburgh Festival, and I walked on stage and we were going to do, not with COE, with another orchestra, and we were going to do Beethoven 6. And we started tuning up and I was still a bit away with the fairies because I've, you know, done Beethoven 6 before and I hadn't really sort of, and then I suddenly thought, why am I playing a C to tune up? Oh my, I've got the wrong clarinet. Oh my goodness. And then there was this sort of, I remember this unbelievable sort of flashing of thoughts in my mind. Can I do Beethoven 6? Can I transpose it? Can I transpose it on the spot? Can I get through it without a mistake? And the answer very quickly came back as no, absolutely not. I can't do that. So then the next option was, okay, you've got to make a run for it. So I ran. I absolutely ran off stage. The orchestra was there. We'd had the applause. We'd sat down. We'd tuned. We were waiting for the conductor. And I said, bye, I'm off. And I ran for my life because I had to get off stage before the conductor came on. And I met him just outside the door. And he was like, what's the problem? I said, wrong clarinet. I'll be back. And then I had to do the walk of shame, I'm afraid. They all waited for me, obviously. And then I had to walk on in front of a whole full usher hall. That was, you know, really embarrassing. I got rid of the case the next day.
Did, yes, I mean,
yeah.
because I mean,
the case never appeared again. Never.
That sort of is most clarinet players' worst nightmare when that it happens.
I've done it the odd time in rehearsal. I mean, you know, I haven't been sort of paying full attention. I played some bit, oh, wrong one, you know. We've all done that. But to be on stage with one clarinet and it being the wrong one, I've never done that before, and I don't want to ever do that again.
Right, absolutely. Well, let us move rapidly on.
Yes, please.
So again, the next one is one of the greats from the chamber music repertoire for wind, and you've picked the Grand Partita by Mozart with the...
Couldn't pick anything else, could I?
The Chamber Orchestra of Europe. So let's hear the ethereal opening to the slow movement. Oh, wonderful. Absolutely wonderful.
Yeah.
One of the other sort of interesting things about that is the instrumentation, which of course we will have to mention because it has 2 basset horns in it as well as...
I know. I mean, you know, so many single reed parts in there. It's fantastic.
So,
I mean, the basset horn I absolutely love. I think it's a really special instrument. And I think only recently, probably in the last 2 or 3 years, have I started playing it really seriously. I don't have one. I've got my colleague in COE has lent me his most of the time. And
sorry.
No, you go on. No, I mean, just that is it, you know.
Yes, absolutely. So let's just move away from music for a moment or two. I mean, you've had a hugely busy and successful professional life. So what are your interests, and what have your interests been in the past outside of music?
Well, I mean, to be honest, sometimes there isn't that much time to do anything else, but I've always read a lot. I've always walked a lot. We've had a dog for the last 14 years. Well, sadly, we lost her over Christmas, but we've got another dog now. So there's hours and hours of walks. And actually on COE, there's quite an army of walkers, and we'll either sort of, if there's a day off, we'll hike into the mountains, and we'll sort of do trails via various restaurants and cafes, and we'll walk for miles up into the Austrian hills, or, you know, mountains near Salzburg and things like that. And even if we're in town, we'll walk miles for a decent coffee shop. And, you know, that, I think, for me, I don't know, that gives me a sense of freedom. I ran a lot as well. I haven't run recently, but I used to do a lot of running. And once again, that is as well, just sort of a real sense of freedom and release. Now we have an allotment, which is busy.
Excellent. So you're a gardener as well. Excellent.
I know, well, gardening. I'm trying. The guy who has the allotment opposite us always comes over every year and says, and we know that we've done yet another thing wrong. His allotment is immaculate. And I keep going over and having a sort of quick peek at him. I go back to my husband and say, Rex has already planted the onions. We haven't even bought the onions yet.
Now, the last thing you want is someone sucking through their teeth, isn't it? As they...
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
I mean, he was very helpful, but it's always like something that we haven't done yet. We're always the last ones, you know. The potatoes have gone in and we've only just bought them, you know. It's that type of thing. We tend to be a bit... And I have a family now as well, so that's quite busy too. Yeah.
So to the future, I mean, I think sort of obviously, I think we'd be interested to hear your own sort of future aspirations, but probably a really big question that's around at the moment is young people and the future in music and the future in the arts, and what that may hold.
I think the reason the arts works is because people have a love for it and a need to do it in whatever capacity. And that has always been why the arts have worked, because it's not, you don't get paid huge amounts of money for the lifestyle we lead, but we do it because we have this need to do it and this love of it. And the young people I teach have that love and that need. I teach these, teenagers, 15, 16, 17, 18, obsessed with clarinet, obsessed with the music. And, I take this clarinet choir at the Junior Academy, and I've decided that actually someone has to do a presentation. and I've had the most incredibly interesting presentations, about the air direction and how that works, and then the modern techniques to the bass clarinet. And this is what all these these teenagers are interested in, and that means that they're going to go to music college. And even though when I was at music college, people said there's no work, you'll never get any work, why are you here? And I think every generation feels that, but I have hope that because there's such this love and this need for these kids to do it, that they will find a way to make it work. I mean, sadly at the moment, everything's against us. COVID has basically stopped everything, and Brexit's not going to make things very easy at all. But there is still this need for people to do it, and I hopefully that's going to surpass everything, really.
Do you get a sense of, not in the longer term or even the very short term, but in this sort of short to medium term, do you get a sense of how things are going to pan out in the music world? Because, we've seen a number of socially distanced concerts going on, which, I've done a couple of socially distanced playthroughs. And doing 10 wind instruments when you're 2 meters apart and there's like 8 of you in a gym, it's weird.
It is really weird. Yeah.
I wonder how you see that sort of, because I think you've done some socially distanced playing, but how do you see sort of the next 6 months, the rest of this 2021, for example? How do you think that's going to pan out?
If I'm honest, I don't know. I mean, at the moment, there's no playing at all. And then we will go back to socially distanced. And actually, when I first started being booked for things, I thought, I don't see how this is going to work. I'm sitting 2 meters from the oboist and 2 meters from the bassoonist. But actually, we did make it work because by various gestures or movement or maybe just experience, we worked out how we could do it. It's not a fun way of playing, though, because you don't feel that collegiality that you really feel as a musician when you're playing with someone and you feel, the slightest movement of their breath or anything. You can't get that from so far away. And that's what makes you play really amazingly with someone else. And that's what makes an orchestra work. I think there's going to be a lot of streaming. I think orchestras, whenever they get back, are going to be trying to stream absolutely everything, because I'm not sure that even if the orchestras get back to working, that the audience is going to be able to come. Not in the great numbers, not for 2021, not in the great numbers that we have seen. And that's a shame as well, because it's the audience that makes a concert. Otherwise, you're just playing to an empty hall. So who are you playing for? You can play for yourself in your back room, but we thrive on audience and we thrive on those atmospheres and that sort of idea of, thousands of people in a room having that same experience. I have to hope it's all going to come back. And I think it will. I really do think it will. But maybe not totally this year. Maybe by Christmas we might be able to see something going, something happening, with people being able to sit next to each other again.
Yeah. Well, oh goodness me, time flies. That brings us to your final disc.
Yeah, I don't want to leave on anything depressing, though. That conversation we just had.
Well, interesting, because the final disc is Mahler Das Lied von der Erde, and I wasn't certain which bit you were going to choose. I thought, well, are you going to choose the ending of it? Which if you do that, well, that's Goodbye Vienna, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. No, I thought maybe not.
Literally, yes, that's
exactly.
That's end of. However, you've chosen the and again, I think you have reasons for choosing this particular recording as well.
Well, I mean, Das Lied von der Erde, I've been lucky enough to play a few times, and once again, it's incredibly special. Sarah Connolly, I think, is the most amazing singer. Once again, we've come back to singing after all the sort of, the clarinet repertoire. But I listened to this in the car. Her voice is incredible. But Yannick has this incredible energy. I mean, he was probably only 35 when he did this recording. And yet the energy within the music, especially in this first movement, it just takes off. And then, obviously it has this incredible cycle to the end when everyone's in tears. But this opening is really sort of life-affirming. And also as well, it reminds you that big orchestras can play. I don't have to do Fidelia with 13 people for the rest of my life. This is what we're going to get back to. And this is this huge sort of sound and, 100 people on the platform making all this.
What a great note to end on. Let's hear this. Oh, glorious. Really glorious. Marie, thank you so much for sharing so much of your musical life with us. It's been an absolute privilege.
Well, all I can say is thank you, Andy. I mean, it's been so wonderful to chat, not just today, but, you know, when we chatted it's been it's been fantastic. I've so loved it. Thank you.
Yeah. And now I believe we have an open house question time. So I'll hand over to Sarah, if I may.
Thanks, Andy.
So first up we have John.
Firstly, what kind of clarinets do you play on at the moment? That was one question. The second one was who is a clarinettist over the years do you most admire? And the third one was, do you have a shed in your allotment?
I'll answer the last one first, shall I? No, we don't, but we need one. But the thing is, the allotment's literally out the back garden. So we walk through our gate and we end up in the allotments.
I would say wherever your allotment is, you need a shed.
Oh no, we have a shed in the back garden. We definitely do. We're all right. We're all right on the sheds. Thank you. What do I play? I play Peter Eaton's, which I've only had about 4 years. So you heard my Peter Eaton's, and I used to play Yamahas before, which I really enjoyed, really loved. But then I decided that I needed to change. Basically, a couple of people had said to me, I think they're a bit old now. And I found these Peter Eaton's, which I absolutely adore. And I think I've become a different player because of them, actually. They've just allowed me to do even more of what I wanted to do. And I think looking back on it, maybe the Yamahas stopped that a little bit. So yeah, they're very free. They've got a lovely sound. I can get so many colours from them. Yeah, I adore them.
Thank you. And who do you most admire from the sort of halls of fame in the past? As a
Jack Brymer.
Jack Brymer.
Jack Brymer. I grew up, you know, his was the first recordings that I had. You know, I love Thea King as well, but I never had so many of her recordings. I don't know why. I think suddenly, you know, somehow Jack Brymer came into my sort of consciousness a bit more. And he also wrote some fantastic books. One was just the clarinet, and sort of also From Where I Sit, which was his autobiography, which I read constantly. I absolutely adored that. And that, I think, had a real influence on me.
Okay.
He was an amazing man. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Right.
Okay, brilliant. And next up we have David C. I think you had a question about Mozart.
Hello, Marie. I didn't come to your concert. I normally do all the advertising, but as soon as Paul said you were doing the Mozart, the first thing I asked him, are you going to be playing it on a basset clarinet?
Oh, yes, the thorny question. I didn't play it on the basset, no.
I know you didn't. No,
I know.
Have you played it on a basset clarinet?
Do you know, I haven't yet, no. I mean, I have tried it on the basset and I practiced it on the basset, but I just haven't had a basset long enough to play it on one. So, yeah, they're very temperamental.
Are they?
I would like to at one point, I have to say. I really would, yeah. But no, not yet. I haven't done that yet.
Okay, good, okay.
And next up we have Robert C.
Hi, Marie. I'm his twin brother. Can you tell?
Oh, yeah, sorry. I hadn't quite clocked that.
Well, with John, Andy and myself, we're the clarinets, I suppose, in this conversation. I found myself playing basset horn with Andy several times. We love it. But
Yeah.
what about the extremities? Andy and I also found ourselves screeching at the top and the bottom with the bass and E flat. Have you ever gone that far?
I have. I wouldn't say that me and the bass clarinet is a marriage made in heaven. I have done it quite a lot, but it's not something that I particularly will jump at. However, the E flat I absolutely love, and I play that an awful lot. And I think as a clarinetist, you often tend to want to do one or the other. You either want to go you know, high or low, but actually the E flat, I think, is the most amazing instrument. It's maligned. It shouldn't. It's the most beautiful, sweet sounding instrument. I can see everyone else rolling their eyebrows at the idea of an E flat clarinet being sweet sounding, but it really is. You know, you can play the most beautiful tunes on it.
Depends who's sitting in front of you.
Oh, flautists hate clarinets for such
Yes, so does my brother.
Yeah, I was about to say. I remember doing this off-stage bit at the prom, and one of the the flute lady, Pat Morris, she always used to sit there and she used to say, I hate clarinets. Every single time I sat down with an E flat, I hate clarinets. And then I stood up to do this off-stage bit in the proms, and I looked straight in front of me, and who was in the audience, literally by my bell? Pat Morris. She sort of looked at me and she was like, it's you again. And then, you know, in the nicest way, because she's a wonderful, wonderful lady.
Thank you, Marie.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Catherine Hammond, you have a question.
Hi, Marie. I just wondered whether Brexit was going to be affecting your ability to play with the chamber, the Orchestra of Europe, or whether that's still, you know, that's still possible for you, or obviously it might be more difficult with.
I mean, if Brexit's the thorny subject per se for musicians, it's going to be harder. I mean, we're going to have to obviously get visas and things like that, and it's going to be much harder work for the office. They're going to be having to spend a lot of time filling out all the paperwork for the Brits. But
do you have a base anywhere,
they're not,
or do you sort of?
Well, the office is in London actually, but we don't really have a base. So what we do is we start. I mean, we have done residencies in the past, you know, in Graz and, you know, Berlin and places like that. But basically, we will rehearse for the first 3 days in the place we will have the first concert, and then we'll move around from that. Mm-hmm. And then sometimes we spend a week here and a week there, but that's going to be very difficult. You know, with obviously needing a different visa for a different country is what it's looking like at the moment. And how to get the visas as well. I read an interesting article today with Joseph Middleton writing in The Guardian about, you know, having to get visas and giving passports in and things like that. So I think COVID has stopped a lot of the so-called problems immediately, because obviously we're not working, but and hopefully some things will be sorted out a little bit more before we actually start working again. So but it's, there's lots of, I mean, the orchestras all the time are just trying to work out what's happening next, I think, in that respect.
Well, fingers crossed.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
I think Douglas had the same question, but I wanted to ask a question actually, Marie. You mentioned that when you started work in your first orchestra, that you learned things that you didn't learn in college about how to play in an orchestra, and I just wondered if you could pass on any little gems or nuggets, top tips to us.
Maybe it was just the fact of being in that sort of situation, which was very different from being in the college situation. I think I realised that it was much more on not what you were seeing, but what you were feeling. So there was a few conductors that beat very ahead of time, and the orchestra never played with them. And of course, you know, we'd always been told to follow the conductor. Paul's not here, is he yet? No. We'd always been told to follow the conductor. Otherwise, I really. But actually, I've realised that more of it was done by what I was feeling from the people around me. You know, sort of the way they were taken, where they were. So I end up now playing with people's breathing rather than actually the sound they make. So everything's sort of before that. And actually, I think at college you don't realise that because no one else around you has realised that. So now as COE, we go into college and we do a lot of training, as does everyone else, and we constantly say, well, how do they breathe? How do they breathe? That's going to tell you how they're going to play that phrase and things like that. So I think that's what I learned more than anything.
Okay, lovely. Rachel has a question.
It was, you've obviously played all over Europe, certainly, and I'm probably all over the world. I just wondered if you had a favourite concert hall.
Ooh. It's a difficult one. I've got maybe three. So, Concertgebouw has got the most incredible sound, and there's something about the history of being on that stage. So that's my favourite one of my favourite ones. But interesting, there's a little place we used to spend a lot of time in Graz, in Austria, sort of south of Vienna, where we did this long we would be there 3-4 weeks doing festivals with Harnoncourt, and they've got this unbelievable box-like hall, very similar to the Musikverein in shape. And that's really the most amazing hall, but also has very special memories, that one. So that's a favourite one as well. I mean, yeah, there's some amazing halls out there, and they're all very different. So it's quite interesting to walk into one you haven't been into before and think, oh, I wonder what this is going to be like. So, yeah.
Thanks.
Brilliant, thank you. Does anyone else have any more questions? Helmut, would you like to ask a question at all, or?
It's more of a comment. 100 years ago, Thea King played the Mozart with the orchestra that I was with, an amateur orchestra. And what I wanted to say, Marie, was that your performance for me was quite incredible, because it was made it very chamber music like, and you were able to get such quiet playing in some of the passages and the expression, and it reminded me very much actually of how Thea King played it all those years ago. So that's
a complete compliment to be, even mentioned in the same sentence as her. So thank you very much.
And she was incredible effectively for years when she looked after her husband, as he was ill in his last lap for many years, who was the other clarinetist, Thurston,
yes, yeah.
Yeah. And also once I had the pleasure of Jack Brymer, but it was your performance which bowled me over, actually. I really thought it was so lovely.
Thank you very much. I mean, I had a ball. I thoroughly enjoy playing with you all. And I think, the second you enjoy something, then it feels like a chamber music thing, doesn't it? I mean, because you're playing with people. Even if you're playing a concerto, actually, you're playing with, the person just sat there and the person sat there. You're not on your own, That's important.
So that was a great, thank you. That was a great experience.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Douglas has a question.
Just to follow up, I noticed the name of your orchestra refers to Europe, which is geographical rather than political, I assume.
Yes.
Whereas there's another group called the European Union Chamber Orchestra. They're based in London. I don't know what they're up to. I mean, have you any idea?
No, I know. I don't. I noticed them a couple of years ago that they have appeared. I don't think they tend to do a lot in small towns around Britain, I've noticed. I did have a little Google on the website. But yeah, our Europe is definitely sort of a geographical Europe.
Quite right, so it should be. Give my regards to Peter Redmond, by the way.
I will do, yes.
School friend of mine, yeah.
Oh, really? I will definitely do. He's very well, actually. I saw him last week on a Zoom call, so yeah.
Good.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Marie, for sharing all the details of your life and career.
Well, thank you for having me. Thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure. I've really enjoyed it.